Dr. Kylie O'Neill with Calhoun Wellness Collective. Thank you for coming in and spending some time with us today. I will tell you that we mentioned before we started recording that when we put the ask out to the community, who do they want to see next? And so many people said, we got to talk to you. So thanks for coming in today, and I can't wait to hear about what you guys are doing.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah. All right. Before we get kicked off too deep into the current stuff, give us a little bit of background. So born and raised where?
Born and raised in Cleveland, Ohio.
Cleveland, Ohio. So big family?
I have a twin sister and an older brother.
Okay.
Sister's fixing to get married. Older brother's married, ironically, to a PT as well. She does pediatrics, so she handles that, and I handle ortho in the family.
All right. So you've got so your background is PT, physical therapist, right?
Yep.
Grew up in Ohio. Where did you go to your formal schooling?
Slippery Rock University.
Where is that at?
North of Pittsburgh, about 40 miles.
Slippery Rock University.
Yep. They nicknamed it the Slimy Pebble.
Oh, goodness. So, I mean, seeing that on a diploma, hanging up in an office, I mean, would people say, is this like legit?
Oh,
That's kind of weird.
Yeah. And I thought moving here I would get more people asking about it because there's the Slippery Rock, Arkansas. But,
okay.
Yeah, it's a good conversation starter.
I bet it is. So what led you down the path of going into PT?
I knew I never wanted a desk job, plain and simple. Like, I never had any injuries like a lot of PTs growing up. I just knew I was so passionate about fitness and health and the body. And so when I was in high school, I went to a vocational school, and they called it the Allied Health Program. And so through that program, I got to shadow some PTs very early on to learn, okay, I like what I'm seeing here.
I would think that would definitely be a valuable tool within your high school. It was within high school, right?
Yeah.
You know, so many kids nowadays, when they graduate, they don't have a clue. And knowing that was available to you, I'm sure was huge. Was that the only thing that you were able to shadow, or are there some other fields?
I shadowed nursing. I actually got a nurse aide assistant license, you would call it. And I did do some training with that and really realized that was not my forte.
Not your forte.
Yeah.
All right, so we've graduated. We're on to university. How long does it take for education base to become a physical therapist?
Yep, it's a doctorate program, so that's 7 years. There are some programs out there that have a fast track where you can do it in 6 years. So I started on that fast track, and I quickly learned that I didn't want to speed through college. I wanted to enjoy the college experience a little bit. So
I'm sure there's a lot to have to memorize and learn through it. So taking your time, a little bit slower pace, probably a good thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
All right. So we've graduated. You are now a doctor, and you're entering the workforce. So going through that, I'm sure there was probably some internship time that you had to do. How long of a period was that?
You had I did a 2-weeker in Hawaii, a 5-week clinical in Colorado Springs, and then 2 10-week clinicals, I think it was. And so I did one in Florida, one in Ohio. So I was really lucky. I got to kind of travel around the country with that.
So where did you end up with your first full-time job?
Virginia Beach, Virginia.
Virginia Beach, Virginia, right in the middle of the swamp, as they call it, right? Politicians, military, a little bit of everything, right?
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Virginia Beach. So tell us about Virginia Beach. I think it's where you met your husband, right?
Yes. So I found the job on Instagram, moved to Virginia Beach, didn't know anyone, got reconnected with a distant cousin that I didn't know that well growing up, but we became really close. So I was there for a year and had been in the dating scene and then got burnt out on that. And so I got a dog. And that dog I thought was going to fulfill that void in my life. And after a month with the puppy, I said, no, I better find someone. And so that's when I met my husband. And he had been living there for a year as well. And we just hit it off, both really passionate about living a healthy lifestyle. And so the rest is history there.
So tell me about the job. Were you at a smaller practice? Was it a large practice?
It was small at the time. They were just starting out. So that was the cool part, is I got to be there in the early stages of that business growing. It was 2 PTs who were business partners, and they started that company. And over the course of the 4 years that I was with them, I got to watch them open other locations, bring on administrators, because when I first got hired on, PTs were treating patients and answering the phones and booking and accepting payments. So I got to learn so much behind the scenes that really helped me understand what it takes to run a business. And looking back, I'm just so grateful for the opportunity that I got to just absorb all that.
So being able to be around people at the startup, I can see where that would be a huge benefit for you, especially where you're at right now. What are some of the things that you learned working with those two individuals that you're able to take and carry on into practice today?
The first big one that I'm realizing right now is how to market. I think there's probably a lot of PTs that want to start their own business, but they don't know where to begin, or they're wasting a lot of money on advertising online and paying for things that just aren't very fruitful. And whenever I was working with that company, I learned how to talk face-to-face with physicians, and I learned how to go to a CrossFit gym or a golf course and set up a free, injury screen event and just actually spend time in the things that form connections, because the relationships, as you're aware, that's where it's at.
It is all about the relationship. When I got into real estate, I was told that there's two ways to make money in real estate: sell real estate or sell things to real estate agents, right? You can go broke trying to market yourself to death, and you hit the nail on the head. It's all about relationships. You focus on the relationships, the business will come.
Yes.
So how long did you work with that group?
4 years.
4 years. 4 years coming to an end, you're thinking about something different. So what led to you taking that next step?
I was at the point where I felt like I was comfortable in treating the whole body orthopedically, except the pelvic floor and women's health. And so this is becoming a bigger thing across America, the pelvic floor therapy, especially through TikTok and social media. People are just starting to recognize it and realize that they can get help by a physical therapist. And so I was with that company, and we already had pelvic PTs on staff. So I could see why they didn't want me to take the leap off and niche down in that area, because I already specialized in some other areas. And so that was kind of the point where I felt ready to go on my own and really deep dive down the pelvic floor path. And so I took some courses on my own. I left that company and started my own LLC. And I knew there was a chance that I would be moving to Louisiana within a couple months too. So this was kind of a proof of concept for me. Like, could I start my own physical therapy practice and figure out the billing, figure out the marketing, and all of the things that go into entrepreneurship there?
Well, backing up a little bit, you said you saw yourself moving to Louisiana in a short period of time. Why Louisiana? What was the draw that brought you guys here to Louisiana?
I like to say that's a God thing. We have a pastor here in Calhoun, Trey Fisher, who came and did some discipling to military members in Virginia Beach, including my husband. And that opportunity was the first time I heard the gospel growing up in that way. I grew up Catholic and never really studied the Bible or anything like that. And when I sat in our friend's house, and he taught us, let's go through scripture by scripture and actually think about what it's saying, and then go back to the Old Testament and how it relates. It just blew my mind. And my husband was kind of the same way. Like, we got married and never even talked about God getting married. And so from there, we were just going to get a fifth wheel RV, and my husband and I were going to move around the country until we found somewhere to sink our roots as he exited the military. And Trey said, why don't you move to Calhoun, Louisiana? We have a great church community. You're looking to start a family. It's a great place to raise a family. You'll have land and all the things. So that sold us.
I've heard people use the term, it was a God thing before, and I don't want to diminish any of those statements or take anything away from them. But this truly was, a God thing that brought you guys here. I never imagined that, and I'm just wondering why you don't have that on your About Me on your thing. So that was awesome to hear. Thank you for sharing that.
I knew it'd come up at some point, yeah.
Yeah, that's very inspiring. And as a believer myself, just going out to the ends of the earth to make disciples, a man from Calhoun, Louisiana, went to go minister to some military people, and brought you and your husband both back with him into our communities. That's pretty awesome to hear.
Yeah, we can't imagine living this life now without this the church community we have, and just all the relationships we have here. So It's been amazing.
That's really good to hear. So you guys on a whim, not on a whim, you felt the calling that we're going to pick up and we're going to Louisiana.
Leap of faith.
Leap of faith. What'd your extended family think about that? So you've got I would have to assume, this is a big assumption on my part, but you're an established professional in Virginia Beach. I would have to assume making a good income where you're at. Your husband is transitioning out of the military, may or may not have plans, but y'all both just going to pick up and you're going to go to Louisiana. Probably didn't know much about Louisiana, right?
Oh, no, I'd never been here.
And we're moving to Louisiana. What did your extended family think about that?
I'm sure they thought we were crazy. They haven't admitted that yet. We both come from very supportive families, and so our families just said, if there's anything we can do to help you, if you need help moving or anything, we'll be there. Just say the word. So that meant a lot for us.
So did you lay any type of groundwork before y'all packed up the vehicles and started heading to Louisiana, or you're just like, we're going to figure this out once we get there?
So I was 3rd trimester pregnant at the time.
So all of that at the same time as this?
Yes.
Wow.
So when we first decided we're going to move to Calhoun, I got on, because Mama Bear likes security for, the soon-to-be baby coming. So I got online and searched physical therapy companies. And that's when I found the company that I was with last in West Monroe. And they were amazing. They took me under their wing, treated me like family. And it just really gave me a new home to practice what I do. And I'm forever grateful for that.
How long did you work with that company?
So I was with them when I moved here from October until March, and then I went on maternity leave. And after maternity leave, I came back and I was able to work PRN too and just do what fit my schedule as a mom, trying to, balance both.
So at what point did you pull the trigger and said, we're going all in and we're going to create this new business?
When the PRN hours, because those can be flexible, they just didn't have the hours to meet what I felt as a family we needed financially, because my husband's in school right now. And so I just kept driving past this strip plaza every single day on my way to work. And I thought, it would be so nice to live closer to home and work close to home. And
Right.
So finally we were spending Christmas with a dear family from our church that watches my daughter. And we told them about our dream to open a physical therapy practice. And they said, well, why don't you do it? And that's all my husband and I needed to hear. And so we switched gears.
A little bit of encouragement.
Yep.
All right. So you've pulled the trigger. We're doing this thing. So I know that there's got to be capital is going to have to come in at some point because things just don't appear out of thin air, right?
Mm-hmm.
So as you start planning through that process, walk us through some of the bigger pieces. You don't have to go into great detail, but just some of the bigger pieces, because I believe that there's a lot of, and we talked before we started recording, there's a lot of ladies that are out there that have some amazing talents or great ideas that they are confident they could push forward into a business, but they don't take that first step because of just, I don't know if I'm good enough to make it happen. I don't know if people will buy into what I'm trying to make happen. I know you did this with your husband. I mean, he is a co-owner of this business,
Mm-hmm.
but you are the face that everybody sees when it comes to this business. Tell me some of the steps that you guys took to get this business up off the ground.
Ooh, let's see. Well, the first step is, looking at what you think your costs are going to be for operating the business and looking at the cost of the lease for where you're renting from and seeing, how much of this lease is going to cut into my total revenue, because you don't want a lease that's going to be too much.
Right.
And then the startup costs. I'm using a business credit card, Chase Business Inc., a little shout out. And so that's balancing some of my startup costs for like the CrossFit rig or equipment. Like I wanted to get a really nice PT table so that I'm not leaning over patients breaking my back all day.
Right.
And so just factoring in some of those things is a great place to start on paper. And then once you feel like your idea on paper is good, take a proof of concept of, can you start this business and a subletting from someone else. Or like if you're looking to open a bakery, just start selling to friends and just see how much it grows from there. And then if it's growing good, then go all in.
Go all in.
Yeah.
What scared you the most about starting this up? Was there anything? Was there anything that you had to say, you know, this could have been a stumbling block for me if I allowed it to happen?
I think just leaving the security of not having to think about anything other than showing up at work and treating patients to now I have to handle all aspects of the business. And when am I going to do that? So I finally figured out when I put my daughter to bed at night, that's my time to catch up on documentation or billing or things like that. And I try and do social media posts whenever she's napping. And so, the biggest thing was leaving the security.
How did you get over that hump of believing in yourself enough to leave that security behind? Because that's big for many people. I see people all the time that they have something really great and they're doing it part-time. And I know that if they would just pull the trigger to step out on, whether it be on faith or believing in themselves, whatever it is, just be able to step out and go all in on it, they could make it if they want it. What do you think? What would you say to that person that is at that point that it's like, yeah, but what do you say to that person?
Trust God.
Trust God.
Yes. I mean, I think I was lucky from a very young age to have an aspiration when I was in that allied health program. You know, I want to go to PT school, and then I got into PT school, and then I had this dream of moving to the beach and living the beach life, and then I made that happen. And so the more I bet on myself and saw that, you know, if I set my mind to it, then there's a good chance it's going to happen, the more I realize I can do things. And then, you know, you add in the faith that God's going to carry you. That doesn't take away responsibility of thinking through things.
Sure.
But
you still have to do your part.
Yeah, absolutely. But if you just take that step, and even if you fail, start small so that your failures are small, and don't get upset by the fail, but think, what could I have done differently that would make this work better? Because I mean, I've made those mistakes as a physical therapy owner, and I've learned, and it's natural growing pains.
Yeah, you know, I don't know who to attribute it to, but I've heard it said many times that if you're going to fail, you need to fail forward.
Yes.
You need to learn from that mistake. And some of the best education that you're going to ever get is going to be from your failures and you taking the time to learn how it happened and what you can do to prevent it from happening in the future. So I know the line of work that you're in, you're probably going to have patients that are self-pay, and you're going to have a lot that's going to be insurance pay.
Yes.
How frustrating is it working with insurance companies?
Whenever I was back at that first company, when I was handling all the authorizations and, you know, ringing out their co-insurance or copay, that was a lot to handle. And so whenever I decided with this practice that I was going to take insurance, I'm being very selective at which insurances I take. So it's called a hybrid model where some of my caseload's cash, some is insurance. So I'm doing Blue Cross is my first insurance. I'm doing Medicare as my second insurance. TRICARE, the state of Louisiana is actually switching from TRICARE East to TRICARE West in 2025. And so with that, they're saying you can't become contracted with us because it's not worth it for a couple months. You have to wait until we switch over in the new year. So hopefully next year I'll be able to do TRICARE, and then by there, the VA too. And
now, do people still have the ability, if you don't accept their insurance, to be able to pay and file on their own to get reimbursed?
Yep, it's called a super bill, so I would just give them that and they'd submit for out-of-network benefits.
So anybody that wants to use you and have insurance that you don't take, they still can. They just have to submit their own insurance for reimbursement.
Right, and they don't have to submit a super bill. If they just want to hand me cash and be done with it and not do any paperwork, they could do that. But if they want it to go towards their deductible, that's a thing. Or if they have an HSA card, we can swipe that HSA card through, even though I don't take that insurance.
What are some of kind of a little vulnerability here? What is the biggest mistake that you feel like you've made in starting a business? If you had to look at That's a tough question. I may not should have asked
Probably not doing it soon enough.
that.
You know,
Yeah. The
I
biggest mistake is not doing it soon enough.
I learned so much from, the first job I took, but I think I probably waited a little too long to be authentically who I wanted to be. And then whenever I moved here, I learned so much from that company about their culture that they had that was amazing, and how they take into account the person's personality profile to create an awesome team. But I realized how much my belief system was part of who I am as a person, and I probably should have, just been true to myself as to following my passion sooner. But we could all look back and say that about so many things.
But I mean, there again, you could probably look back to things that you may not have learned had you started sooner. This is my 18th year of selling real estate, and I haven't been with the same company, although I'm with what I feel like is the best company for me now and hopefully for the rest of my career. There's something that I definitely learned from each of those places that have made me who I am today in business. So
that's true.
Can't necessarily take all that away, but I think it's reflective, or it's really nice to hear that you wish that you would have started it sooner. And that, do you think it was just a lack of confidence in your ability, or just intimidated about the process?
I think about the process because kind of both. For me here as a mom, I said, I can't start the business. I have a 1-year-old at home. But we're just so blessed to have that family in our life that, we ate dinner with at Christmas that encouraged us. And they said, go, do it, start the business. And I said, well, what about my daughter? Who's going to watch her? And Patty Alds, bless her heart, Patty watches Evie. And she said, don't worry, I'll watch her. And I said, don't you need to talk it over with your husband? She's like, oh, no, we're sure we'll watch her. So that just immediately took every, worry I had off my plate, because my daughter's my biggest concern.
And how did you meet Patty?
Through church, yeah.
So can we say that everything's kind of circling back to that community, being centered within your church is a huge resource of giving you that confidence to step out every day?
It gives you faith instead of fear. If you're living in fear of the what ifs, then, you're never going to feel ready to take that first step. But just having the faith, and having other people who have faith in you really helps.
That does mean a lot. So the business, the doors are open. We are now ready for patients to start coming in. So what was kind of your first steps of going out? I'm sure you didn't want to go out and try to cannibalize the people that you worked for here.
Right.
I don't take you as a person that would want to do that. But there's a lot of business that is out there. You just got to start making those connections. What were some of the first steps that you made to start making those relationships happen?
Yeah, you're right. So no one had been into CrossFit gyms to do screens, at least at the company I was with. And I tried to look around at other PT companies too, because I also don't want to step on toes of other established businesses. And so I reached out to the CrossFit owners of the different boxes around here and said, hey, can I come set up a table and offer free dry needling or free injury screens? And so that was really well received, because, CrossFit gym owners want their athletes to be able to participate in those workouts. And so that was a great marketing tool that I had used from my time in Virginia Beach that I implemented here, just to get people in the door and, get feeling better.
So what about the medical community? Did you reach out to any in the medical community for referrals? Because I would assume that the traditional path for a physical therapist is a referral-based type business. Am I thinking about that correctly? Or
yes, definitely referrals are great. So what I learned from my Virginia Beach time is offices don't always like cold calls of you walking in with a script pad. Here, I decided I would call from the parking lot, see if they were even interested before I kind of walked in, disorienting them a little bit with the referral pad. And so that went much better here. I would also say marketing, like cold calling, there's such a difference between Virginia Beach and the Bible Belt, because whether or not someone appreciates you calling or coming in, they treat you a little bit better just by the nature of living in the South.
Yeah, a little Southern hospitality there.
So that was different.
So how long have your doors been open? So just kind of give me timeline here. So day one was when?
Like June 13th was our grand opening, I think.
So June 13th of 24.
Yep.
And how are things going right now?
I have probably almost a full caseload. And when I say full caseload, that's 20 hours a week of clinic time. So I'm part-time. And I'll probably need to start using that waitlist feature in the next couple months, I'm sure.
What kind of feeling is that, knowing that June 1, we're recording this, today's what, July the 22nd, 23rd? We're not talking 2 full months yet.
I know, it's crazy.
I don't know many businesses that can, well, let me back up. Sure, you're going to have some retail and maybe restaurant that's going to have the initial buzz that's going to take off, but you're not a buzz type of business. It is, hey, this is who I am. This is what I'm offering. Here's my value to you. And you're like saying you're booked up and you're not 60 days into it.
Yeah. I mean, I like to say that I evaluated really well and calculated, and then I did research, between Ruston and West Monroe. Olive, Shoe Calhoun, there's this whole, 30-minute commute of drive between the two where there's no physical therapy office. And so if I could save people a drive into town, because I know I would like that if I lived in Calhoun, right, then that's a great spot to put a PT clinic.
Well, there's something you said earlier that I want to kind of dive into, and I think it's kind of important to what you're starting here. And you said something to the effect that I wanted to be the authentic me. Mm-hmm. Tell me a little bit about that. Reading some of your background, and you had mentioned a little bit earlier that you wanted to get involved in some other areas, but their focus for you was here and here. Mm-hmm. Not saying that they put you in a box, but I mean they wanted you to specialize here and didn't want you to expand into other areas. How do you? Any type of service industry, there's practices that you can follow. So we can say same. But it's that authentic version of you that you're bringing to the table is why people keep coming back. So help me understand what that means to you.
I would say it's holistic physical therapy. I don't even know what started this all when I was in Virginia Beach, but I kind of went down the rabbit hole of functional medicine and listening to podcasts or following the other clinics in town that were advertising functional medicine. And so whenever I moved here, I love PT, but I think you need some essential components of that make it well-rounded. I think if you're a PT clinic, you need some weight to load the patients through something that replicates when they're having the pain. And so that's why I built the whole kind of mini CrossFit gym in our office so that we could replicate that. And then with the functional medicine, whenever I'm doing an evaluation, I want to know not just like your previous medical history, but I want to know how's your fatigue right now? How's your energy right now? And deep dive onto that, because I think sometimes we really miss the mark of the person if we're just treating physically, but not asking about other factors of their physical health.
How many, in one of your bios or looking at the website that you have, there's a statement that's on there that says we treat the whole person. Mm-hmm. If a patient comes to you and they have a problem in this area, how often do you find that it's this area, and this area that could be causing this to happen?
So often. And I think that's the hard part with some physical therapy operating procedures is, you have one diagnosis code, let's say knee pain on the chart. Well, then the PT feels like they can only treat the knee. And if a patient brings up something else, then, you would have to go back and—
it's another treatment plan.
Yeah, and add that signature from the physician or get the front office to change coding or whatnot. And so whenever I started this practice, I made sure I can easily add other areas of the body. And then just all it takes is a fax over to their doctor to sign off on that treatment plan. Not to mention we have direct access. So I can treat them for up to, I think it's 30 or 60 days in the state of Louisiana for something before we even need the signature, unless they're Medicare. And so a great example of this is your back doesn't always cause back pain. Your back can cause ankle pain. It can cause glute pain. It can cause knee pain. And so all the time, like every eval, I'm always screening, even though they're coming in with ankle pain, is it coming from the back? Or if they're coming in with hand pain, is it coming in from the neck? Or another good example of this is the pelvic floor is part of your stability system. And so if someone's coming in with back pain, and, it's a lady who's also dealing with incontinence too, well, it's because she's not able to engage the pelvic floor. Do you mind if I go on a tangent?
Yeah, please. I mean, because this is so pause on that real quick.
Yeah.
The reason I asked the question that way was I've used a chiropractor in the past and have had problems with my shoulder and with my arm, and I never would have thought that was related to my spine and my neck. That I've nerve being pinched is causing my pinky to hurt or my elbow to feel like it's aching. And that I would never have really figured that out had someone not started asking the questions about other areas. And I would have to assume that from a holistic approach, we say we have a problem here. Sure, we can treat that problem, but let's figure out what the root cause of that problem is so that we can fix that, which in turn is going to help all of this come back into where it should be so that we're going to feel good. So that's why I wanted to ask about treating the whole person or the whole body. But yes, please continue on that path.
Yes. So back to that lady, like if I had a patient with pelvic floor issues and she's having trouble with leaking, well, typically in the last 50 years that we've been treating pelvic floor symptoms, people always think the Kegel's the answer, like the pelvic floor squeeze. But, as we've learned, sometimes muscles are overly tight and that's why they're weak. So a good example of this is if I have you squeeze, you may have seen this on Instagram, if I have you squeeze your fist, you're strong. But if we over tighten it, now you can't squeeze as strong. Or if we over lengthen it, you can't squeeze as strong. So in every muscle of the body, pelvic floor is no different. We need to try and lengthen those muscles too. And I specialize in treating the jaw too. And so if we're just chronically clenching our jaw or clenching our pelvic floor, and this can be men too, then it's going to affect the rest of the system. And sometimes people need to work on their neck strength and stability or their core strength and stability so they're not clenching for stability. So just something I see. And going back to the root cause you said, I think that's what started my deep dive on the functional medicine is whenever patients were coming in with other things they were complaining of, I started to realize there's probably a root cause for most things. And that's what led into my functional medicine journey recently, postpartum with Hashimoto's. A year ago, I felt terminally ill and I was laying in bed all day and had no energy as a mom with a new baby to do anything and let alone think about going back to work. So I would cook dinner early during the day because I just didn't have energy by the end of the day to do that stuff. And through hair tissue mineral analysis and working with a functional medicine practitioner, I realized that there was a root cause for this thyroid condition I developed. We don't know specifically, what was the trigger, but my mineral status was tanked and I had some other issues going on medically. And once I addressed those, look at me now, like I have enough energy to run a business.
So what you kind of, you just mentioned it, but there's some tests that you run that gives you a deeper dive into the person's chemical makeup of things they may be deficient in. Can you tell us a little bit about what is that test called and how do you utilize it to help people?
Yeah, it's called the hair tissue mineral analysis. And so I would just have someone come into the office and I cut little pieces of hair off their head. And then we take that first inch of growth and throw away the rest. And I send that into a lab and it comes back with a report that shows their mineral status, heavy metals that are accumulating in their body or ratios of those minerals. And so it's just a way to show patients like what you're feeling isn't all in your head or, it's not something that has to be fixed by pharmaceuticals. Like And let's be clear, I'm not diagnosing or treating patients. I'm just providing them education through the resources and technology we have available. And because I have not been through the functional medicine training, I say, here's what's going on. If you want to get help, let me refer you to a local girl. Shannon Dollum's based out of Monroe. She's amazing at this. And so just getting them in contact with someone who lives and breathes this all day, every day for a living. So for me, at a physical therapy practice to do it, I want to offer that because I'm the one catching those patients and can at least get the ball rolling in a very economical manner. And then if they need more, they can continue on with that.
From a pharmaceutical standpoint, as it relates to patients that you treat within your physical therapy, what's your opinion on our use of day-to-day diagnosing things and just medicine fixes everything? Do you feel like that we tend to over prescribe to things that could be fixed through more holistic paths?
Oh, absolutely. We're over-medicated as a country. The biggest problem is most people don't have either the knowledge or they don't have the grit to do what it takes to change their life.
What are some of the most common things that you see people, and I don't want to give anybody, and I may be asking you to do more than what you should be. I don't want to give anybody the thought that you're trying to say all of this is bad.
Yeah.
But what are some of the more common things that someone could, whether their own medicine, there may be other holistic approaches than to be medicated if they were just doing this, and this? What are some of the common things that you see?
Right now, because I've gone through it, when you buy a car, you see that car everywhere. For me, it's just the thyroid issues and energy and fatigue that people have. And if they're not on medications for things, then they're trying to mask it with caffeine. And so, my patients that are relying on caffeine or they're relying on having quick fixes like candy, in their purse or in their car or things like that to give them that quick little hit of energy, those are the things that I'm like, something's wrong here. Your blood sugar is in this state of dysregulation and your energy shouldn't be like this. So that's the big thing I see is just the energy production.
Where's your long-term vision with this practice? I know that you've got in your business name, collective that's in there. Tell me what that vision looks like.
I would love to just have a business that had other wellness practitioners, like let's say it's massage or functional medicine or even like a FNP. Anyone who's in the practice of helping people feel better, if I could create a one-stop shop for that. And right now we're pretty small, like I only have one other treatment room, but if we continue to grow, I'd love to just create a place that gave other people the ability at a very low stakes level compared to, their own big business at entering their own thing.
We see a lot of medical practitioners that are going to work for big corporations, having the, I hate to use the word mom and pop, but having the smaller practices, you don't see it as frequent anymore. And I think that's just a lot to do with the complexity of insurances and being able to have bigger resources. It's the amount of staff you're seeing these people have to hire is substantial just to keep up with the regulations. Do you really see that you could be able to create something on the level you want without having to get big corporation size or having to merge with big corporation? Because I think that there's a lot of value the independence can bring to the table. There's a lot more flexibility you have of being able to treat people than going from a big corporate level. How do you see that with you down the road?
Yeah, I would never merge with a big company. I can guarantee that right now. And just from driving around here and dropping off, business cards to other practitioners, I'm realizing there's other practitioners that have the same vision and goals in mind to do things their way. And a big part of it is as our reimbursement declines across the country with insurance companies, that creates a burden on practitioners. And so that's why we're all exiting the big conglomerates and big corporations, because we don't want to be burned out as healthcare professionals.
Right. But the message I want people to hear is I think there's value, tremendous value with independent people like yourself.
Absolutely.
Because you have the flexibility to be able to bring the treatment in at the time the patient needs it, instead of saying, well, I don't know, we don't have anybody that necessarily specializes in that, or that's not our bread and butter, so
exactly.
we may not want to do that. Where do you see, so when you put together a business, did you put together an official business plan when you guys started this?
No.
Where do you see yourself in a year? So less than 60 days into it, you're pretty much full with the time you've allotted.
Mm-hmm.
Where do you see this thing going?
Well, we have a new physical therapy program at ULM with some awesome students going into their second year. So by next year, they'll be entering their third year looking for clinical placements. So part of what I want to do with the company is help other young physical therapists kind of become masters at their craft and good at what they do. And so just mentoring them, bringing them on for clinicals, and then if the opportunity presents itself and I have available treatment space, then hiring on some new ULM grads to work for our company. And maybe by that time I'll be on maternity leave again, and it'll be the perfect time for them to come on as I take a little break for 8 months.
Yeah, that would be great. You mentioned mentoring. What does mentoring mean to you?
Just hands-on practice of things that they don't feel comfortable with. Things.
But why? Why would you want to mentor somebody else?
Because I was mentored so well. Yeah. Like I had the two bosses in Virginia Beach. We learned dry needling pretty early on as physical therapists. And I didn't feel comfortable sticking a needle everywhere in the body. And they were quick to say, stick it into me. I'll teach you and we'll practice and we'll make sure you're comfortable with this. And then if I had a difficult patient, case study, we would hash it out and talk it over. What do I need to be doing differently? And that just really helped my confidence soar as a new PT.
But what would you say to those practitioners that are out there? Well, all you're doing is training up your competition.
There's enough need to go around. That's the biggest thing I've learned is starting new companies, there's always a need. And if you're worried about your competition, then you're not showing your value enough.
I agree with that 100%. I hear that in my line of work a good bit. Why are you sharing that information? You're just giving your competition a leg up. Well, if I was that insecure about my business that somebody could do what I'm teaching better than me, maybe I need to go back to school on what I'm doing at that point. There's enough to go around.
Perfect.
And being able to raise up leaders around you, it makes me feel good when I see someone else be able to succeed, but I don't live in fear. I don't live in fear that somebody's going to take something from me. As long as I'm given, how's anybody going to take?
Ain't that the truth? Yes.
So your husband is a co-owner of this business with you. I would have to assume he's your biggest champion, right?
Oh, absolutely.
And he, I would say, offers a little bit of a compliment to what the business is doing. He has a health and fitness app that he runs that probably some of that is tell me how y'all can tie that in together. Mm-hmm. Is there any of that relationship that kind of works within that business together?
A little bit, yeah. So he is a business partner. He has two other business partners for HTL Training Systems. It stands for Hold the Line. And with that business, it's a CrossFit or functional fitness, rather, programming company. And so it's through Wodify that people can subscribe. And there's different tracks, from I don't have any gym equipment at my house to I have, full-blown rig and barbells and everything. And so with my patients, as they progress through physical therapy, they're doing great. They're going into our fitness space and they're starting to lift some load and everything. And by graduation day, I say, if you want to continue on with this, here's an option. Just do a free trial with HTL and see how you do with it. But then my husband comes in. He'll use this space to film well, rather I'm doing the filming, demo videos so that when people are using that app, they can just click and see how the technique is performed and make it real easy for even the new beginner into fitness to see what to do.
So are there any individualized training sessions that you guys offer?
Right now, we have classes available for women. They're a 1-hour circuit training class called Fellowship in Fitness. So we start with the circuit training, and then we finish with a little women's prayer group. Of course, I'm not going to make that, required for anyone, but definitely a great way to get plugged in with some other Christian women if you want to work out.
Is this something that's going to be during the week or something on the weekends?
Monday, Wednesday, Fridays at 8:45 a.m. And then if you follow us on social media, we're going to be adding some evening classes.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
So I want to know about the dry needling. Tell me what that is. I saw a small clip on a local news station when you were doing that. I believe that was with your husband. So what is dry needling?
So dry needling, it's an acupuncture needle that we use. Acupuncturists are going to go by meridians on where they're sticking the needle into the body. Physical therapy, we go by trigger points. So whenever you have a muscle that becomes tight from either a strain or from overuse, which is common with athletes, then we find the trigger point. We stick the needle into the muscle. And compared to acupuncture, they're not going very deep under the skin to get a twitch response, whereas with the PT trigger point dry needling, we're going deep into the muscle belly, and the muscle's going to do like a quick Charlie horse. Mm-hmm. And so I just do that a couple times on the muscle to get the muscle to go from this contracted state here to relaxing through that twitch process, and it releases the tension. So that has helped me so much as a PT when I started out with dry needling when I was a new PT, because you learn trigger point referral patterns. So for example, if someone's having pain on the front of their shoulder, they'll come to me and be like, yeah, I think I have a bicep tendon issue. Well, then I'll press on the rotator cuff muscle on the back, and they'll feel that pain on the front. And I'll go, it's this muscle back here, and that just blows their mind. Or like another example is the sternocleidomastoid here will refer right above the eyebrow. And so if someone has a headache here, I'll start by just massaging this. And if they're like, wow, that changed my headache symptoms, then we just treat the muscle, not where they're having the pain per se.
So if I understand correctly, there's times we have muscles that are under tension all the time and just don't know how to relax.
Exactly.
So when the dry needling will force that muscle to relax, does it fix it at that point, or or are there other techniques that have to be used after that to train? Is it train the right word? Train that muscle to not stay so tight all the time?
Yep. So it's that neurophysiological response that gets the muscle to go back to that resting state. If they have that pain because they strain the muscle, then we need to retrain that muscle through gradual load progression to get that muscle tolerant to perform, whatever they were doing.
So it's actually working that muscle so that you can train the muscle. Hey, this is what I really need you to do.
Yep.
On a constant. It's just not a one and done. We got to retrain.
Yep.
Now, how the dry needling, how is that different than when the doctor will put the diodes or the
patches.
Yes.
The electrical stim.
Yeah.
So that's very superficial in the sense that the sticky pad is going on the skin and it's stimulating mechanoreceptors that are right under the skin. And so it's called gate control theory, and that's just blocking out those pain signals from going to the brain because your body can only feel one sensation at a time. And if it's feeling that, then it's not going to feel the pain.
So it's not going deep enough to actually affect what needs to be affected. Is that correct? Now, the dry needling, I know there's a lot of people that got fear of needles. I've never had acupuncture before, but watching you do it, it looked like it was extremely thin, very, very small, thin needle. And to me, it doesn't appear like it's a painful process.
No. The funny part is I was terrified of needles growing up. So we've come full circle now. I'm sticking them in people. But it's a very tiny needle, so you usually don't feel it go in because I put enough tube pressure from the plastic tube it's in to the skin, and then I tap the needle in. What you do feel is that twitch response. Right. And that, I would say, is very dependent on the individual and their state of sensitivity. So I'm an empathetic person. I don't just torture people with the needle.
Right.
If they can handle one twitch, then they may get some benefit. I usually try and go for 2 or 3 twitches in the muscle before we go do some exercise to rehab the muscle. But I don't do it on someone who's terrified of needles. They have to give consent and sign off, and it's really not that bad. And I'm quick.
What would you say to the people so I've got parents that are aging, and as people get older, they have to have if they have a procedure done. After that procedure, a lot of times physical therapy is recommended to make sure things are part of the treatment plan. But every time you hear people talk about it, it's, physical therapy, it hurts so bad, or it's just things are tough. Is that a common expectation that people should have a concern that it's going to hurt more before it gets better? Or is that just overblown in just certain circumstances?
I think it's overblown, especially because they're coming from that generation where it was like they believe no pain, no gain.
Right.
And so even in physical therapy, I don't know if you've ever heard of the Graston, that metal blade, when it came on the market, and PTs would scrape muscles to get blood flow. And when that first came on the market, they were kind of believing that you had to bruise the patient for it to be effective. And now with all of the pain science coming out and just other things, we're starting to realize you don't have to crank on someone's knee or shoulder to get that range of motion back. You can just be diligent at working within their tolerated range, and then eventually that range should come. And so I always try and get people to realize you should feel better leaving physical therapy than you did when you walked in the door. And if you're not leaving better, then within 3 visits, we, keep trying. And by the 3rd visit, something's wrong. We need to change our plan, or we need to refer you out.
Well, that's good to hear that physical therapy is not meant to cause you more pain
No.
to get better.
Some people call it pain and torture, PT.
But not you, though, right?
No, we just joke about it.
What would you want the community at large to know about you and the business, or the service that you offer the community? What is it that you want to know? Who are you trying to attract? What do you want people to know that I've got a problem? Speak to those people. Who are you trying to attract?
I'm trying to attract everyone with pain or just, lingering issues. I want them to know, number one, it's direct access. Like I said, you don't need a referral to come in unless you're Medicare. And for Medicare patients, getting that referral is easy. Just send a fax over. And I want them to know that when they come into my clinic, it's one-on-one. So we're not doing any co-treats with other techs or PTAs that are also kind of bouncing the care around. So they are not going to have to repeat their story of what happened multiple times. Like the attention to detail is huge for me. And so remembering, exactly how the injury happened. And of course, I chart it down, but I try and really get to know the patient. I get to know what motivates them, what their fears are regarding their injury, and how that's affecting their life. And so much of what has made me a great clinician, I feel, is just my ability to listen to people. And that's led to some very interesting situations and diagnosis of catching glute tears, or I had a patient with a blood clot in his leg that the nurse and the doctor just kind of brushed off after surgery, or I had a patient with a parotid gland abscess, and he's got a referral sent to me for TMJ. And so just listening to what they're saying and not just kind of going, okay, let's do your bridges or your whatever exercise you're doing. I would go, let's talk about that for a second. Are you going to the ER for this, or are you going, wherever you need to be, and just having very frank conversations with people about their situations that are going on regarding their health.
So let me tell you what I just heard you say. You correct me. You're not going to sit down and go over a checklist with them, say, you got this, well, you got that, we check this box, so you got to do this, this, and this. You form a relationship with your clients or with your patients, and you listen to them and what's going on in their life, and then you try to treat based on what you're hearing from them. I can tell you too many times in my life that I go to doctor's appointment for whatever the ailment is, I get someone that sits down with me, they check some boxes, and somebody's going to blow in the room and say, okay, got it. This is what we're going to do. Go see such and such at that point.
Mm-hmm.
So you are the person they're going to see. You are going to listen to what they have going on in their life, and then you're going to work with them to come up with a treatment plan.
That's the only way I do it. Yep. And I kind of nickname myself like the quarterback. As their physical therapist, I'm the one spending the most time with them. And so I'm kind of like hearing these red flags in all areas of their physical health.
Right.
And so I can catch things and send them to where they need to be. And so I take that responsibility very seriously.
Somebody comes to you and you don't feel like you can help them at that point. Are you going to sit there and still take their money, or are you going to refer them to somebody that can help them?
Oh, not taking their money. Nope.
Yeah.
But they probably won't get away from me until I get them the number or the name or location of where they need to go for help.
And I think that's huge. We're not always going to be the best fit for everybody. You don't know until you sit down and have that conversation. But being able to take the time and point them to who can actually help them, I think is really huge. And it speaks to the business that you're building in our community. And I'm thankful that God tapped you on the shoulder and said, you guys need to come to Calhoun, Louisiana and invest in this community. I'm thankful for it, and I know our community will be too.
Thank you.
So thanks for coming on today. And if there's anything we can do to help you guys, let us know. But I'm inspired knowing that we had someone that was pulled all the way from Virginia from a local pastor, and you guys put your yes on the table and said, we're going to go all in on it. I think it's pretty amazing. Great story.
Thank you, Brian.
So thank you for taking the time to watch or listen to this podcast. We really appreciate your involvement. Please leave us a comment, or even better yet, subscribe to this podcast and hit that notification bell so that you can be alerted for every new episode when it hits.